Right? Okay, so after you've cleaned and polished everything, this is what it's going to look like then. Everything should be nice and clean. You need to polish the insides of these pieces as well as the outside. And everything else should also be clean. And I use Zep brake wash. You can use a contact cleaner, you can use carburetor cleaner. I don't really like carburetor cleaners because most of them are too strong, but you can use them. This is a brand somebody gave me last week. It's a Worth brake and parts cleaner. Seems pretty good. But here in the shop we use Zep, Z-E-P, brake wash. So you'll use that to clean the entire cylinder. And clean the cylinder anywhere you see carbon, anywhere in here, anywhere on any of the power valve pieces. Everything needs to be spotless. It needs to look like it was almost new. So this cylinder, I've cleaned it several times already with the contact cleaner, and it looks like it's clean, but I'm betting that I can get more dirt out of it. So I'm going to take a clean yellow rag here. I'm going to spray WD-40 on it. I'm going to wipe out the inside of the cylinder bore. You can see I got quite a bit of dirt. So you should use a light colored rag with WD-40 and wipe out the cylinder bore. WD has an amazing cleaning agent to it that really works well on cylinder bores. So now that cylinder is clean on the inside. You can do that a couple of times. Now we're ready to start reassembly of the power valves, and these two bushings right on this main power valve flapper shaft. So we put just a little bit of lubricant on them, just any type of thin grease. I don't care what brand you use, don't call me and ask me. Just any type of thin grease, something very thin, and just put a very small amount on there. You can also replace these rubber O-rings if you want. If it's an older cylinder, this one does not need to be replaced. These O-rings don't do much, so you don't have to be overly concerned about them. They leak no matter if they're new or old. So put the bushings on the flaps and then drop on the flap, and then drop the flap down into the cylinder. And I usually tap very lightly on these to push them in this direction. Make sure they're all the way seated, and then I'll tap them down just a hair. Be very careful, that's a soft material and you can damage it very easily. But you just want to make sure that those bushings are all the way in their seat. From there, we've got to put the O-rings in here, and I always put just a little bit of the sealer in there. And to seal this front surface, this front cover plate, you can use Bond number 4, or you can use this product that we sell, which is identical. It's made by 3Bond. It's got 1194 3Bond liquid gasket. It's the identical product as the Bond number 4. And they're both very thin and gray, and this does not ever fully set up. So I put just a touch of it in each one of these O-ring slots here. And then I put the new O-rings in. That just holds them in place while I'm doing everything else here. I don't want them jiggling loose and getting out of their seat there and then have a leak problem. That's for the coolant, so those are very important. The coolant goes in and out of the cylinder through those holes. From there you have to put a gasket sealer on here, and it's difficult to do on the cylinder because the power valve flap and the O-rings are in your way. It's much easier if you just surface this, put a coating on this surface of the cover. This is the front cover, and just put the gasket material on there. So I just put it on my finger, and you just smear it on there. Very thin. You do not want it thick. If it's on there too thick, it's just going to squeeze into the water jackets there where those O-rings are and restrict water flow. So just put it on there very thin. And then after that, I just inspect it real close to make sure that I didn't miss any place. This one looks good, so it's ready to go on. So from there, just line up the holes, drop it on. Now you need to put the Allen screws back in. The ones that have the spring hooks, one that goes on the from the seated position on the bike. This would be the upper left and the lower right. I just lightly snug these first. But one little trick is you want to make sure that the power valve flap, so when you look through this port, make sure that that power valve flap is all the way up before you tighten these bolts. If the power valve flap is down and you tighten the bolts, it will bind up the power valve flap. It will be stuck in that position. So make sure that you've got it up when you tighten these bolts. Otherwise the power valve will be locked in the down position and the bike will run very poorly. If you want the torque on this, you can look it up. I just tighten them. And do not over tighten them. Most guys like to over tighten everything. Just snug everything up. That's good enough. I use ratchets with short handles on them. Big long handles, you're just asking for trouble. That makes you strip things out. Now there's a little bit of gasket material, it's hard to see in the video, that is squeezed into the exhaust port. I like to clean that out of there. So I put a little of the brake wash on a rag. I'll reach in there and clean that out. I usually wipe some of it off up here just so that I don't get it on my hands as I'm installing the cylinder. So that part is done. Now we have to put the side power valves in, and one of them has an L on it. Difficult to see in this video, but there's an L stamped right here. That would be left as you're sitting on the bike. So on the left side of the bike. These also need to have just a little bit of grease on them. You can replace that O-ring if it's an older cylinder. This is a new cylinder, it doesn't need to be replaced. And you put the retaining plates back in, and then the torque screws. Now the screws need to have Loctite on them. And everybody puts too much Loctite on stuff. Every bolt that I see that a customer's touched and put Loctite on, they've used a half a bottle on there. Just a very, very, very small amount of Loctite gets the job done. Okay, from there you've got to put the power valve timing plate on, and the first thing you need to do is rotate this side power valve so it's all the way open. So you look up inside the exhaust port with the teeth of it pointing towards the front and make sure that it's fully open. Then you put the flap, the big flap in there, put that in the top position all the way up. Now this is ready to just, yep, it's not. Now it's ready to go on. So the side power valve is all the way open, the flap is all the way up, and now this just drops right on. That's timed correctly. It works correctly, it's timed correctly. So let's see if we can time it wrong and have it still work. I don't think it will. So I'm going to turn it about a tooth down. I'm going to put it on there. I didn't get it too down. And that only moves part way. The flap doesn't go all the way up. The side ports don't open. So whenever the thing is assembled correctly, the flap is all the way up, side ports all the way open. It just drops right on. Almost. And then it moves like it's supposed to, all the way up, all the way down. You can check that by inspecting through the exhaust port. Now you're ready to put the final Allen bolt that retains it on. It's already got Loctite on it. Okay, so I pointed out this bolt earlier in the video. If you have not messed with that bolt, then the power valve should still be in the position that it came in from the factory. But the factory doesn't always get them set exactly perfectly, and I always like to double check that or reset them. In order to do that, you have to loosen up both these bolts, but that's going to be the next video on how to set the power valve Z dimension. So now we're ready to rotate the cylinder to the other side, put in the other power valve. So this linkage plate goes on this side. After you put this on, there again, I'm going to double check. The power valve flap is open all the way and the side ports are open all the way. So that's correct. From there, you've got several things to deal with here. There's a stepped washer that goes on the back side. It fits in this hole. This piece here is just designed to hold the spring in position, but the spring could go either way. So you can set this on here first with a stepped washer, but this long spring arm goes to the top. And this plate has a little groove where that spring fits. So that spring will end up being right there. So you put this on first, or you can put it all on at once. Anyhow, this has got Loctite on it. I have it to where both spring tips are pointing up, and I just snug this just a little bit. And now that I've got this long spring tang to the top, but this short one needs to be on this side of the pin, on the bottom side of this pin. So I'm going to take this awl, stick it in here, and just pry it over like that. And hold it down with my thumb while I tighten this. Okay, now it's in correct position. So the long arm of the spring is to the top, the short one's on the bottom side of the pin. So the long goes to the top side of the pin, the short one goes to the bottom side of the pin. The long piece also fits in that groove on this ball shaft. This is tight, gears are aligned properly. This thing is almost ready to assemble. Last thing would be to set the Z dimension, which is the power valve flap height. That'll be in another video. That's all for now.